Do not be in a rush to grow up. Do not wish your life away because you're just going to turn around and wish you had it back. All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Let's party. So you guys know Jubilee, they always got some good stuff for us, and usually we're checking out their middle ground. We always do that on the live streams because I like to go through that in depth, but they have a different show, the Spectrum show. Very similar to what Peter Boghossian does. Basically, as you can see, they're all lined up on the middle line, and then it's just agree, disagree, strongly disagree, all of that stuff. And this is, do all high schoolers think the same? And I thought that was pretty interesting because I haven't been in high school for, 15, 20, whoa, I'm getting old. It's been a while. So I figured, let's check it out.
High schoolers are kids. 3, 2, 1.
So the first prompt, high schoolers are kids. Agree or disagree?
I feel like to say high schoolers in general are kids is almost like defeating the people who are in the minority. Like for people like me who have grown up more just mature for my age and I guess fitting more an adult mindset, I feel like I can't say for myself that I'm a kid because I definitely make adult decisions time and time again. I mean, there are people who still have the mindset of kids, but I can't say high schoolers in general are kids.
You're a kid, bro. You're a kid.
I feel like with high school, it's such a broad statement to say high schoolers because there's a giant difference between a freshman and a senior. Like it is, that's why like when they try to date each other, it's like, why is that 18-year-old trying to date the 14-year-old? Like it just doesn't make sense. I feel like it would be naive to ignore the fact that like, especially anyone who's a senior, they're about to be a legal adult.
I think kids need mentoring. That's how I see it. I mean, adults too need mentoring, but I think kids need that extra help and that extra push. I've seen many kids who have been forced to be older or act older as they are to mature faster. That's why I went for agree.
The kid who's on the disagree line saying that, oh, some of us grow up older. I'm sure he's, there's stuff in his life that's made him come to that conclusion that he's older and more mature. But that doesn't mean you're not a kid, bro. You're a kid.
I want to move.
You want to move? Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I
Talk
didn't
us
know if I
through.
could.
What are you thinking?
Well, I agree. I feel like there's just
Being
so
easily swayed, another sign of adulthood.
many decisions, especially in high school, that we have to make that are not like kid-like, and they expect us to act a certain way. And also like the fact that we're even able to drive, how should we still be considered a kid?
Do you mind if I move? Yeah. I moved because I feel like, especially at that 16 to 18 age, you're constantly planning for your future where it's actually difficult to live in your childhood. It's just kind of, you're unable to live as a child. So it's like, how can you consider yourself one when you're constantly planning for your adult life and future?
But that was not the prompt. The prompt was not high schoolers are adults. The prompt was high schoolers are kids or children or whatever they're saying. There's a difference between not being an adult and being a kid.
I was a freshman. All the teachers around me always told me that I needed to prepare for my future. And I feel like, especially coming after online school and quarantine, I'm still living in that middle schooler mindset. I'm still basically like a kid living and preparing for my future, which
I said, shit, me too.
I'm clearly not ready for.
I feel like kid is kind of a weird word. So like it's just kid and adult. And I feel like in high school, I kind of want to be thought of as a kid because it's kind of like, oh, he's a kid, right? It's like an excuse almost. Like you're allowed to mess up.
Ryder, that is exactly the mindset you need. Do not be in a rush to grow up. Do not wish your life away because you're just going to turn around and wish you had it back.
I really can't like look at my classes full of 18-year-olds and say, these are adults. Like, I feel like now it's later and later we're turning into adults. I don't feel like we turn into, I mean, of course there's people that have to pay bills at 16, but to say a high schooler is an adult, I feel like I like to know that I can grow so much more from that. Like, oh, I did that when I was a kid, not, as an adult.
Exactly. And so the idea that he was just bringing up what I was saying about, there's kids who are at 16 having to deal with adult problems, but there's more to being an adult than having to pay bills. There's experiencing life. There's the type of expectations that how you behave, and there's the understanding that your actions are going to have the type of consequences that they have. And like he's talking about, he doesn't want those consequences, and I don't blame him. I don't either.
Today's high schoolers have it harder than previous generations.
Today's high schoolers have it harder than previous generations. All right. What do you guys think about these? Let me know in the comments.
I feel like now our generation, we have more resources for help that we need, and way back then, like mental health, that was like, they would put you straight to camp or like some conversion, stuff like that. But I feel like now there's just more resources. We have the internet, we have the media.
Like, would you have wanted to send a pigeon to your friend instead of texting your friend? Like, stuff like that. Like, would you want to have, we just have it easier now.
I feel like it's an in-between thing because I feel like social situations now are much better, but back then they were much worse. I feel like there was racism, teachers could beat their own kids, and I feel like now there's so much things that we cannot do, and I feel like it's for the better.
Can I move?
When I think about this question, I kind of like went to bullying and how much easier it is to get bullied nowadays, especially on social media, because it's so easy to hide behind a screen. People say worse things. And I think that mental health, maybe it was just as bad back in the day, but because of social media, it's become more prominent and we see it everywhere.
I was going to disagree with her, but definitely social media has exacerbated the way that mental health issues will manifest for sure.
Another thing that I also thought about was you guys say that we have more resources, but don't you, well, you don't have to agree, but I feel that the resources have kind of made us a little less smart because we're able to look up that, like, the answers to our test or like, I don't know, everything's just so much more accessible that I'm not really learning as much as like my mom and dad did.
Now, I mean, obviously with the advancement of technology, that's going to be natural among humans in general, not just kids in school and the way that we learn. Like, I never used an abacus in school, but we always had calculators. And I remember having to learn writing cursive. I don't even know if they still do that. I remember having to take a typing class. Now, there's no reason for a class. Kids just learn it by the time they're in school already. So, there's definitely something to be said about how these resources affect the way that we learn. And then bring it back to the social media aspect of bullying. The way that kids can get bullied is far more vast than it used to be. Like, obviously, before, bullying was a more physical thing. And, you could get bruises, broken bones, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much of that you really see. Obviously, you see the fighting videos on World Star and stuff, but I don't know how representative that is of everyday life in most high schools.
I know some dumb, people they're like, is it hot outside? And then they'll go to their phone and check the weather. Like, just go outside,
I feel like school right now is so easy for our generation. Like, it is so incredibly easy. Like, especially now that I'm senior year. I mean, I'm not taking incredibly hard classes, but like, they don't even give you homework because they know you won't do it. Yeah. Like, there's like, they would rather have you pass than like teach you something. And like,
no child left behind.
Like, the amount of kids that held back is like nothing. Like, it's just, oh, keep going ahead, go ahead. And so like, seeing like classrooms from like older generations, it seems like, oh, they're like learning, there's more respect to the teachers. Now, like, there's like such little discipline that every class is just like amok.
I feel like just because things are easier does not mean it's better. My friend goes to college in San Diego, and there's literally a group chat for people in a nursing major just to cheat on the work. And if we're having nurses that don't even
nurses, so even oh wow, like that's depressing. That's depressing. And I mean, I get it. I would cheat in school. Why wouldn't you? But at the point of nursing school, maybe it's important that you do actually know the stuff.
Know how to like give you medicine, stuff like that. It's scary.
Exactly.
I did want to hit on how the pandemic impacted you guys.
Yeah, I think it did impact our generation. I know personally,
Definitely.
I was always so great at talking growing up, and then going into coronavirus, not really like talking to my friends a bunch and like being kind of like antisocial and to myself. Coming out and having to talk to adults was like terrifying. I didn't want to do it at all. I couldn't even talk to like my peers when I went.
And this is already the generation that has higher instances of social anxiety and depression already. And then you put them through all of that. But we just had to lock down, and don't let anybody tell you anything different.
Back to school, I felt like I was still in 8th grade in middle school. So it was very hard for me to adjust.
She's saying that she stopped she stopped going to school in 8th grade, and it felt like when she went back, she was still in 8th grade. That's exactly what arrested development means. This happens to drug addicts. When you start doing drugs and you escape your problems, you escape your emotional development. By the time you come out of it, you're kind of just resetting at whatever age you started. Same thing happens to a lot of people who go to prison for a long time. If you go to prison at age 21 and you get out and you're 45 or whatever, then yes, you will have advanced, but not in the same way. Certainly not.
And this was definitely like the biggest change like that affected our generation, if you think about it. We didn't deal with the bubonic plague or a big, stuff like that. Like this was the biggest impact. And I remember going back to school, I was so anxious. Like I would take half a Xanax, almost every morning because it was so bad.
There was this day where we can finally take off our mask. And it was so weird seeing everyone, but I never knew what to do with my face. It was just crazy.
I never knew what to do with my face. That is where high schoolers are at right now. I didn't know what to do with my face. That's heartbreaking. That is heartbreaking to hear.
I feel ready to explore my sexuality.
All right, here we
3,
go. I
2,
feel ready
1,
to
go.
explore my sexuality.
I knew I was gay at a
Something like
very young
dating?
age. So I've kind of always been ready, or kind of always known.
You've always been ready. That sounds like propaganda.
Like I was over here at like 6 years old, like looking at a TV screen, and there's like a boy, and I was like, he's cute. Like I was like, yeah, I already knew. So like
There's a difference between knowing what your sexual preference is and exploring your sexuality. I'm going to chalk that one up to him not adhering directly to the prompt. But there's a big difference between understanding your sexual preferences and exploring your sexuality.
I feel like it just depends what you determine what exploring your sexuality is, because at least in my book, I feel like I've already labeled it, and I'm already confident and happy with who I am.
Now it's very normal to explore yourself, and I think even just like having sex, it's very, very naive for any adult or anyone to ignore the fact that like people are gonna do that. Like it's or people around you are gonna do that. Are gonna talk about it. Or you're gonna see it on.
But even though that is true and that is the case, we can't forget that the instances of how many people are having sex is going way down. So the people who are having sex, but most people are not.
With the internet, like we have access to everything these days. No one is judged like for waiting or wanting to try stuff, as long as everyone's being safe, as long as it's consensual, as long as you're okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
I also grew up in a very private Christian school. It was very like, it was like a bubble, you know, and, you know, we didn't talk about all that stuff, but now I attend a high school where we actually have wellness classes. Also, social media helps. Those random accounts on my For You page, they're like, how to kiss a boy or something like that. I don't even know.
What is it, WikiHow?
Well, there you go. That is what Christianity will do for you. You want to be so puritanical that you don't want to even talk about this stuff when, like the girl said earlier, you know people are going to have sex when they get to this certain age. They're going to be interested in it and they're going to want to do it. And so by not talking about it, you've driven this girl to learn about sex from TikTok. Good job, Christianity.
There's just so many courses, you know, that's why you got to seek them out and find a support system.
It's kind of like for our whole generation happening earlier and earlier, like where we get introduced to it with like the internet and stuff. I kind of like it to be delayed. I kind of like to be a kid for as long as I can.
Yeah,
do you
bro.
feel like people
That's
don't take you seriously if you continue to, you know, act younger and like want to be younger?
In the sense of like this question, like sexuality, like I feel like I'd rather, because right now it's like most of the pressure is just like, oh, I feel like I'm so behind because I haven't done this, and this yet.
This guy is 17. This is not some young child. This guy is 17. He's about to be the age of adulthood. And he's the lone one out saying like, hey, I just want to be a kid. I don't want to grow up so fast. I don't want all of this shoved in my face. How exactly is a third grader, for example, supposed to know that they feel like Ryan here does? Ryan? I think his name was Ryan. If from that age, this stuff is being shoved in their face. He at least grew up with the innocence of not having that stuff all over the place, plastered on TV, every classroom, every book, every TV show. Kids today are not going to know that they can be uncomfortable and that that's okay to be uncomfortable with exploring your sexuality and that you can take your time. I'm very glad this guy is here to speak up. You know, if anybody is here that's younger, that, you know, is maybe a late bloomer or whatever terminology you want to use, that's fine. Don't be in a rush. Don't just do stuff just to do stuff. Live your life the way that you think is appropriate for you.
It should be so normal.
It's important that we do educate ourselves on these topics, because once we're older, if we aren't, that could take a turn for the worse. I feel like approaching it naturally or in a professional way, like in terms of like school, if they're providing like health classes, I think that's just the best way to go about it. And I completely agree with you. Like I was also exposed to nasty on the internet, and like no one wants to go through that.
I don't think that the school should do it because I think it's really weird. You know, I can never stop laughing personally. Like when I'm in a sixth grader and they say the word scrotum, how are you not supposed to like laugh? Yeah. I don't know. I think it's more of a personal endeavor, but I guess no, not everyone's as smart as me. But I feel like personally, I'd just like to find out on my own. And
it's funny that he says, you know, all this stuff about wanting to be a kid. And I know he's joking, but he says I guess not everybody is as smart as me. But that's exactly him saying that it's uncomfortable and then he laughs and then he, doesn't take it seriously. That's why you need the schools to be teaching this stuff, so that you don't have kids like this just waiting and getting older and having, things happening with their body and urges and not have any guidance. I get where he's coming from, but that goes back to the first question about being kids. You are kids. You need adults to show you what is appropriate and what is not.
I don't like the classroom, let's learn about sex, all sitting together as a bunch of teenagers. Like, that's awful. That's like the worst thing ever.
Is it the worst thing ever? Obviously not. Obviously, you are a kid, which is fine. And kids need to be taught things that matter.
I feel safe at school.
Oh,
3,
I feel
2,
safe at
1.
school. I have a feeling they are all going to rush to the disagree side. But that's my perspective as a guy in his mid-30s who, I graduated in 2008. And all I see about schools is the pew-pews. So let's see.
Go.
Yup. Of course, our
My campus security are amazing. They have a personal relationship with all the students. I've had bomb threats at my school. I've had like shootings literally walking distance down the street where the school had to go on lockdown. It's unfortunate, but also like it just makes me really aware. Like for every classroom, I have what's my hide plan? Who are my people? I don't feel comfortable putting my phone in the phone chart because if something happens, I want to text my family. And that's why COVID like lifted a lot of weight off my shoulders because I didn't have to worry about that all the time.
Again, that is heartbreaking. When anyone who went to school after Columbine, that was part of the zeitgeist. That was something that always could happen. But it wasn't something that happened with any regularity. And for these kids to be expressing that, this is a normal thing that they have to deal with. I mean, certainly banning guns is not the answer, but we need to find an answer. So maybe instead of going after the wrong answer, we need to sit down and have a discussion about what the right answer is.
Also, like a lot of people at my school who have mental health struggles, I'm always afraid that like someone won't be properly treated for that and then they'll just snap one day.
My school has had multiple sexual assault scandals. Like my history teacher right now, my world history teacher, if it weren't for the current sub, it would be with basically a trial. So it's scary. And when she mentioned like the bomb, I think I remember last year someone created an account with our school name and it was like or something on this day, and our school ended up canceling school for that day, and it was horrible.
I feel so fortunate to have grown up in a really privileged area where there's not a lot of violence. However, I feel like I'd be ignorant to say that a school shooting would never happen because all it takes is.
That's a great point. That a lot of times it's not necessarily these low-income areas that experience these school pew-pewers. It's exactly those types of areas where there is access to firearms. There's access to drugs. There is, first world types of problems that will bring on different types of mental issues that are less likely to manifest when you have to worry about where your next meal is coming from.
One kid out of the 2,500 students that I have, and I feel like there's so many different openings on my campus where that could happen.
We have gates, but it honestly looks like a prison.
Okay, yeah, that's
I won't lie. We have security guards. They're not armed,
They're not armed? What is a security guard for if he's not armed? I mean, we saw in Uvalde that even with being armed, they didn't do squat. What are they going to do if they're not armed?
Was a conversation that came up, should our security guards be armed? And another conversation came up, should our teachers be armed? There's just topics like that. I remember.
That's another one that I don't understand why people are so, pun intended, up in arms against teachers being armed. Not saying that you want to put guns in the hands of teachers who don't want it. But if you are a teacher who is a gun owner, who wants to feel that protection, why not? Is the assumption that, like, what, a teacher's going to get out of control and shoot a kid or something? What's the argument? I understand not saying, okay, you're a teacher, so now you have to learn how to be an expert marksman. Nobody's saying that. But if you already own and practice with firearms, why not?
This was actually recently, one of the old students at the college threatened to shoot the whole school. And so even we had to go remote. So it's just like, never feel safe.
So far, their opinions have by and large been in line with each other, with usually one or two of them with a different opinion. And a lot of that has to do with Ryan talking about how he wants to maintain his innocence, his childhood, and all that stuff, where that just seems not to be the case with the rest. So it does seem like high schoolers seem to think, maybe not the same, but quite similar. The last one here. My social media presence is important to me. We know exactly how that's going to go. I bet you Ryan's going to be the only one who steps and says, oh, I don't have that stuff. But all the rest of them will be like, that's all that matters.
3, 2, 1, go.
Of course, Ryan goes to disagree.
I don't particularly post, like maybe just my story, you know, but like I'm not like constantly posting. And if you do, that's perfectly fine. Like that's a lot of people's outlets, and especially creativity.
I don't own a single social media, and like
not
as like a flex. I'm just saying, like I hate the presence of an app in my mind. Like, oh, you should do this. Like it's an app on my phone. Like I don't want to give it any part of my life. So
called it. I knew it. And you could tell by the way he talks that he doesn't want all of the baggage that comes with being on social media and interacting with the entire world. You don't need it. And he understands that. So kudos.
I think sometimes with social media nowadays, it also can fall into career, which is really weird, but that's like what I do. It's like, oh, I can't post that picture of me like flipping off the camera with my friends because like a college or a future boss, because your digital footprint is so real. But
I thought she was saying how like she was getting money from social media. Like, well, I'm an Instagram model, so like I can't not post it. But like, you know, that is definitely an important part of, you know, your social media presence, the future of you know, what you're going to do for work. So I'll give her that one.
also, like, I love having social media. Like, I've had it for years. I've always like tried to ground myself and realize that it's just for fun. It's not that serious. I posted my spam account like way more.
A couple of years ago, I would have been right there, like on the strongly agree, you know, like, because when I moved to the new school, a lot of people were like, oh, how many followers do you have? If you had over 1,000, it's like, yo, you got clout, like you're good. Digital footprint, that is no joke. Like everything you post will come back at you. I'm so glad Instagram took off that feature where you could see what other people liked. Do y'all remember that? That was ridiculous.
That was kind of wild. I mean, luckily, when I was most of the time when I was in relationships, I wasn't on Instagram that much. But I am glad I did not have that or Snapchat in my last relationship, because I don't know how these kids do it.
That's why I'm very aware of what I post. I make sure this is what I want everyone to see.
And when I'm so sorry.
But again, you can notice they're all on the same exact line, except for a couple of outliers. That seems to be the case with all the questions. And so I think the answer to our question here, we'll finish this up. They got this one and then one more question. Or no, I think this is the last question. But it does seem like high schoolers do all think the same.
I'm even embarrassed of like the little like selfies I would post because like they're so stupid. So like looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I would totally never let like my 7-year-old on social media, like, you know.
I got news for you, hon. Everything that you've posted between 9 and 17, you're also going to hate over the next 5 to 7 years.
Things like that. But I actually did have social media very young.
Yeah, me too.
I got Twitter when I was 6. My mom made it and managed it, but I would still like,
What do you need Twitter for at 6 years old? What kind, even if your parents are managing it, why? I mean, like, okay, even Instagram, especially for girls, I understand why you might want Instagram, because you want to, you know, play dress up and post pictures. But what do you need Twitter for? Sharing your deep political philosophy on geopolitics? Like, what?
Tweet about like my little kindergarten like crushes.
And you like having your mom like to like guide like the account. I feel like I didn't have that, unfortunately. So I feel like it just depends. Like your digital footprint could be much more harmful, like when you don't have parents that.
Most kids don't. Like, at least for my generation, a lot of parents didn't know. Like there's no way to have known what the internet and social media was going to be when it was coming up. So like our parents have that excuse, but at least the younger Gen X parents, and definitely millennial parents, y'all gotta know.
Know how to handle social media or know how to prevent it, because my parents, they've never used social media. They don't have a single account. So growing up like begging, I don't think they knew the harmfulness of it, and I don't blame them for that at all. But I feel like that's what led to me being exposed to a lot of stuff. So
exposed to a lot of stuff. Just saying, this is the same guy who said he was ready to explore his sexuality very early. Coincidence? You guys tell me. I don't know. I think that most of these teens are going to pretty much fall in line with each other on broad topics like this. They're not going to know much about deeper, political, philosophical, cultural issues because they are high schoolers. So I'm sure if it comes to what their favorite band is and what their favorite food is, of course they don't all think the same. But when it comes to life and society and stuff like that, it does seem like they do tend to think pretty similarly. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if we sat down with all of them, they would all have their, unique personality and understandings of the world. And as long as they are willing to let that grow as time goes on, then all good with me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for partying with me once again. I'm your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, I am out of here. Peace.